Bishop Henry McNeal Turner was a pivotal figure in the post-Civil War history of the United States. A distinguished minister, politician, and bishop of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, Turner made significant contributions to both religious life and the political aspirations of African Americans in the early 19th century. As a leader who passionately advocated for Black autonomy, he became one of the foremost voices supporting African immigration. His work reflected a deep commitment to racial uplift, spiritual empowerment, and the idea that Black people should seek opportunities outside of the U.S., especially in Africa. Turner's radical support for Black nationalism, particularly his call for immigration to Liberia, placed him at odds with the prevailing ideologies of other Black leaders, but also made him a symbol of self-determination for African Americans. Henry McNeal Turner was born in Newberry, South Carolina on February 1st, 1834, to parents of mixed African and Native American descent. Although South Carolina's laws prohibited the education of free Blacks, Turner was determined to gain his education and taught himself how to read and write. As a young man, he had spiritual inclinations and felt a calling to the ministry. By 1853, he was ordained as a minister in the Methodist Episcopal Church South, but his deep connection to the African American spiritual and political life led him to join the AME Church in 1858. Founded in 1816 by Richard Allen, the AME Church was the first independent Black denomination in the U.S., and its mission of spiritual and social emancipation resonated with Turner's vision of racial equality and empowerment. Turner's powerful oratory skills and deep commitment to the Black community quickly garnered him attention. As a pastor, he worked tirelessly to build new congregations and support the spiritual growth of African Americans in a deeply segregated society. By the time the Civil War erupted in 1861, Turner had already gained a reputation as a dynamic leader capable of mobilizing Black communities. During the Civil War, Turner made history by becoming one of the first African Americans to serve as a chaplain in the U.S. Army. He was appointed chaplain of the 1st United States Colored Troops, a regiment of African American soldiers fighting for the Union. Turner saw the war not only as a struggle to preserve the Union, but also a battle for the liberation of enslaved African Americans. His work as a chaplain gave him a platform to minister to Black soldiers and encourage their fight for freedom. After the war, he remained active in the military and helped recruit African Americans to serve in the Freedmen's Bureau, which provided aid to former slaves. In the Reconstruction era following the Civil War, Turner took his political activism to the next level. He was elected to the Georgia State Legislature in 1868, becoming one of the first African Americans to hold public office in the state. However, his tenure was short-lived. In 1868, he and other Black legislators were expelled from the General Assembly by white Democrats. This blatant act of racial discrimination fueled Turner's growing disillusionment with the prospects for Black equality in the U.S. Turner famously decreed the decision in his speech declaring, "I am here to demand my rights and to hurl thunderbolts at the men who would dare to cross the threshold of my manhood." Despite his frustrations with American politics, Turner never abandoned his faith, and his contributions to the AME Church were profound. In 1880, he was elected the 12th bishop of the AME Church, a role that cemented his influence over African American religious life. Turner expanded the church's presence throughout the South, founding new congregations and encouraging Black spiritual independence. His advocacy for education and self-sufficiency aligned with the AME Church's mission to uplift African Americans both spiritually and socially. Turner also believed that the AME Church had a crucial role in addressing the psychological and cultural wounds inflicted by slavery. He championed the idea that the church should instill in African Americans a sense of pride in their African heritage and help them envision a future where they could govern themselves free from white supremacy. Turner's frustration with the phase of Reconstruction and the rise of white supremacist violence in the South led him to embrace a more radical political philosophy, Black nationalism. He became convinced that African Americans could never achieve full equality in the U.S., which was built on white supremacy. Instead, he believed that the best path to liberation lay in returning to Africa, where Black people could build their nation free from white oppression. Turner was not the first to advocate for African immigration. The American Colonization Society, or ACS, promoted the idea of relocating blacks to Liberia since the early 19th century. However, by the late 1800s, the ACS's influence had waned, and most black leaders, including figures like Frederick Douglass and W.E.B. Du Bois, argued for African Americans to fight for their rights in the U.S. In contrast, Turner became the most prominent proponent of immigration, urging African Americans to leave a country that had continuously failed to protect their rights and dignity. In the late 19th century, Turner made several trips to Liberia and West Africa, where he supported efforts to establish self-sustaining black communities. He viewed Africa as a place where African Americans could reconnect with their ancestral roots and build a prosperous future. Turner's immigrationalist ideas were part of a broader movement of black nationalism, in which African Americans began to see Africa not only as a homeland, but also a symbol of black pride and self-determination. Turner's views were controversial, and he faced significant opposition from other black leaders who believed that abandoning the U.S. was not a viable solution. Nevertheless, Turner remained steadfast in his beliefs, declaring that African Americans should not remain the despised serfs of the country. He believed that black people needed a sovereign nation where they could control their destiny, free from the racism that defined American society. Bishop Henry McNeal Turner's legacy is one of spiritual leadership, political activism, and a radical vision for black liberation. His contributions to the AME Church helped strengthen the religious and social fabric of African American communities in the post-Civil War South. His advocacy for black nationalism and immigration to Africa placed him at the forefront of a movement that, while not widely adopted in his time, inspired future generations of black leaders who sought to build bridges between the African diaspora and the African continent. Turner's ideas about African immigration would later resonate with the Pan-Africanist movements of the 20th century, most notably through leaders like Marcus Garvey. Though Turner did not live to see the large-scale immigration to Africa he had envisioned, his belief in black self-determination and his tireless work on behalf of African Americans solidified his place as one of the most important visionary leaders of his time. In conclusion, Bishop Henry McNeal Turner's life was a testament to the resilience, leadership, and the radical thinking that defined Black America's quest for freedom and autonomy. As both a religious and political figure, he carved out a unique space in history by advocating for spiritual empowerment, racial pride, and the idea that African Americans could and should create a new future for themselves, whether in the U.S. or in Africa. To Bishop Henry McNeal Turner, we proudly stand on your shoulders. For more information, please visit my website at www.ontheshoulders1.com. There, you can support my OTSOG book series. You can also support me on Patreon at patreon.com/OTSOG, and you can hit the super like button under this video. I love you all, and make sure you catch the next video coming up.